Welcome to Venture Node. We are a Web3 community of founders who are looking to learn from each other by speaking to people who are currently in the trenches of their own venture. My name is Adrian, and this is my co host Michael. Join us today with our guest coming from DAOLens. Before we get into the episode, I would like to give a special thanks to Shine DAO for connecting us with our fascinating guest today. Shine DAO is a crypto incubator you can learn more about in the description of the episode. Let's start with introductions.
Perfect. Hey everyone. So my name is Yashvardhan. I'm building a product with my co-founders at DAOLens. What we are working essentially is that the entire space of DAOs, there are a lot of basic problems which we discovered. The problem to get started, the problem to contribute, the problem to understand how can you be most effective in this particular space. So in these industries and in this particular vertical, we are building an amazing solution, and I'm pretty sure that we'll be talking in depth with this with Adrian. From me personally, I come from a background of B2B SaaS product. I have extensive experience building out there. But then as soon as the DAO way picked up, it has always been very fascinating and exciting. I've been a contributor and been working with a couple of DAOs on parallel. And that entire journey realized that for a member who's coming from Web 2, as soon as you enter into Web 3, there's a lot of different hurdles which you face. And that's exactly what we decided to work upon at DAOLens to resolve that. So yeah.
So, like, what attracted you to the crypto space and more specifically the DAO market? You said you had experience more, I think you said like business B2B prior to this, and then you got into the DAO market. So I guess that is it kind of makes sense because you would be more in the business structure, working with so many different companies. So like, how did that connect to the crypto space and then the DAO market?
Yeah, all right, Arjun. So, in general, regarding crypto, I believe the fascination with most of us starts with the Bitcoin.
Hmm.
That's the flag bearer of the entire crypto space. And so that was exactly how I got started. But then the interest become very much exciting when different applications of blockchain started coming. I was the part of the NFT boom when it took place, and then when the DAOs with different applications started to come up, the very ideology that the work can be decentralized. It is very different from how the centralization operations of different companies which we see right now works, and that empowerment which it can enable every contributor of entire organization, which brings and the DAOs give to them. That is something which really allured me. And a lot of different problems which I can very much relate to in centralized organizations felt that it is DAOs are like the perfect solution for that. So organizations such as that being a very active member into decision making, organizations such as enabling each and every contributor to get paid as per of their contribution which they are making, and then making them a part of the entire decision making. I believe that that is something which really attracted me towards DAOs, and yeah, that what brought us here.
So what issues do you see DAOs having right now as a whole, and how is DAOLens addressing those?
Perfect. So one thing what we essentially realized was, and this is coming from all the different learnings and understandings and discussions we have having with all the Web3 builders and leaders across in the last 8 to 9 months, and we have been constantly discussing that. Hey, how do you envision Web3 to go right? How do you envision DAOs to take place? Where it all can evolve? What problems are you facing when you are building a community? And one thing which was again and again repeated a was that see, there is no centralized institution where you can keep a track of all these different communities coming up, and that's exactly what the essence of Web3 is, right? Everyone can create their own community. But then it also brings the operational problem that if I want to get started, where do I get started? How do I find a community? Where do I belong, right? So discovery is something which we identified as a very big problem to for the new beginners to get started with, to identify, understand, and relate to the community where they feel they belong to, right? And in this particular problem, even if I say get to know about a particular organization from different social medias or any other source, maybe by referrals or by my friend telling me about it, there is a huge gap in getting to know that how do I get started with this, what kind of work they have. I bring certain kind of let's say skill set and expertise with me. Maybe I come from a design and product management background, but then how do I contribute to your organization out there? What kind of discussions you have, how much democratic the organization is right now, how much compensation do I get paid? So all these questions are open ended right now, and this is exactly the place where the information is opaque. We want to make this transparent. We want to enable anyone who is entering into the space of DAOs and communities to understand that, hey, this is a community where you can get started. This is something which aligns with your interest. And how do you get started with this? So we are building a fantastic onboarding tool. What it does is that it evaluates you and tries to understand your skills, interests, experiences, and how much you want to contribute to a DAO. And based upon your like what you're bringing on the table, it maps you to the correct place in the DAO. It maps you to the right people in the DAO, so that you don't have that the time to contribute, and that gets lowered by substantial and exponential limits. So that now you know that, hey, based upon my interest, this is the person I need to talk to. These are the projects that I was working upon. This is the compensation which I'm getting for this, and that's how I get started. So facilitating that entire workflow is what we are aiming at DAOLens right now. So yeah.
Okay, sounds good. So you guys are kind of like the, to kind of put it simply, I'd say you guys are like the place where, like, comparing it to the traditional world, you have maybe a website. I don't know what you guys use, but there are websites with a whole bunch of job ads, and you can put in your industry or maybe your college degree, and then it will, in the filter in the job search, and then it'll bring up like a whole bunch of job listings, right? I mean, crypto jobs list is one of them, and yeah, I guess the other route is to go through a HR manager, right?
Yeah. So
Yeah,
I would add on to that, Michael.
yeah,
So yes, what you mentioned correctly is that discovery is one of the vertical which we can have. That for the end user, here's a list of 100 DAOs. You can apply a filter, and you find these 5 communities which can interest you, and you can get started with. Right. But what's more important, what's something which you're focusing right now, is something, say, when you get started with the community, when you have identified that, hey, this is a community I want to get started with, how you reach to the right process into that. How do you understand that, hey, in this particular DAO, these are the work going on. So what are we doing is, essentially, we are building a software tool which we work with DAOs and create a customized workflow for them, that for the different kind of people which are coming in their community, what different roles do they offer to them, what different compensation do they offer to them. So whenever a particular person of that particular profile comes in, they are redirected through that workflow. They are taken into a step-by-step manner. It can be done through a bot, or it can be done through a web portal. And through that onboarding process and guiding them to the right places, we help them get started. So that's how I'll summarize it.
Yeah,
okay,
and I
cool.
completely agree with you. I think DAO discovery is something that is definitely not developed at all right now. I remember on Twitter, like maybe a couple weeks ago, someone was talking about how there needs to be like a coin market cap for DAOs specifically. And I kind of think there's a lot of overlap with what you're building and kind of that idea. Um, and also, even in my own experience, like trying to see if I can contribute to different DAOs, it's always like a very complicated process. And I think that turns a lot of people away. Like there are a lot of very like smart and talented people who are investing in a lot of these projects, and I'm sure they would want to contribute to these DAOs. But whenever it comes to contacting the team, and it's almost like you have to get fully hired into the project if you want to contribute to the DAO, and that's something that I think should be changed. But that being said, like while I agree that this is not necessarily built out that much, there are definitely some projects that are trying to attack like DAO tooling,
Yeah.
and there are like certain processes that people are trying to build. So, what would you say is like the current state of DAO governance and tooling in regards to how are people currently onboarding contributors, and like what other tooling are DAOs using right now?
Perfect. All right. So let me also tackle this particular question, Adrian, in this for the sake of our audience, in this way, that what are the different pain points which people are feeling in our communities right now? Because for those pain points, people are creating solutions. So we can converse to that, right? So as you correctly mentioned, discovery is definitely a problem for the end user to get identify where to what community to pick up. B, getting started and onboarding is another entire vertical, that how can I get started once I've identified a community. C is effective contribution, that what all different tasks and projects are going on. And for Web 2, you see extremely like infinite number of certain projects which we have, like Jira is working on that, ClickUp, Airtable, Notion, Asana, like there is, the limit is endless, right? Which help people to manage tasks, which help people to manage projects, and so on and so forth. Now this becomes more complicated when we come into the entire Web3 space, because you do not have full-time employees per se most of the times, right? You have a interest-based bounties or tasks which you roll out, and a single individual can be a part of multiple different organizations, working for multiple different organizations, and they're contributing not their entire week for you or month for you, or maybe a certain number of hours in the entire week for you. So that dynamics changes, and then they want to be paid very instantly. They don't want to wait till the end of the month. They want to get paid as soon as their task is completed. So the payment structure changes up, the contribution structure changes up, and it is a very different set of problems that we do not have in web 2. So certainly scaling web 2 tools is not a very great idea in this configuration and composition what we have in a web 3 space. So this entire vertical of contribution and then payment of these is another segment which people are working upon. And then finally, there's coming up these organizations. Essentially, what they are trying to do is start evaluating. And I haven't seen much examples on it, but I envision it that once there will be so many different DAOs of a single project, let's say I can call upon any community, development community, and there are 100 different such DAOs, then there will be a struggle to get the best of the best folks to work for their DAOs and contribute to that. We don't see it right now because the contributors are much and DAOs are limited. But as soon as the DAOs will expand, there will be this competition which will start taking place between these different DAO communities to get best folks to contribute for them. And in that space, we need to have these tooling which, let's say, list or rank different communities, which give them some scoring that, hey, this particular community is much better and much better suited for this. So entire space of, if you have heard Glassdoor, which we have in Web2, certainly which gives different ranking to companies, which help their different reviews for different companies and so on and so forth, or maybe feedback mechanism for different companies which comes up. So that space is going to build up as soon as the more and more DAOs are coming into this vertical. So yeah.
Okay. So I did notice that you mentioned Web 2. So if possible, can you like outline the structures between the Web 2 businesses and then DAOs, and how they differentiate? Maybe you can outline some improved efficiencies that DAOs brings, or some improved opportunities over the current models, because yeah, these kind of processes within maybe the tech industry, of hiring people, of going through interviews, going for a HR manager or either another third party. This process has been the same for a very long time, pretty much since the beginning of time, right? So I think to
Yeah.
change it would be very interesting to see what happens. So yeah, what kind of advantages do you see when bringing this kind of DAO model over what's currently there now in Web 2?
Perfect. And I think, Michael, that is one of the most asked question to us as well. That,
Yeah.
hey, how what you're working upon, DAOs are going to be different from already Web2 existing companies. And that's pretty interesting, right? So think of it in this way, that in Web2 companies and this particular corporate structure have been with us for as far as I can remember, like it passes on from generations, certainly. But
Yep.
what's happening out there is that usually in most of these companies, there is a very centralized decision making. And we'll cover these different pointers where these web 2 companies or centralized companies are not that much effective, or maybe not justified with the kind of work culture they should be having. The first point we'll talk about is centralization, because DAOs start with decentralized organizations, right? So when we talk about centralizations, so the problem which we have in these companies in Web2 is that the decision making process is in the hands of very restricted number of people. Those may be the board of directors, maybe the executive suits or the VPs of the companies, and they decide upon that, hey, in which vertical the company wants to expand, in what geography the company wants to expand, and maybe we don't want this particular product vertical. So that decision making is much more reserved to the set of folks who are at maybe top of the ladder, certainly. And it doesn't trickle down, or even the normal employee might not even have any say of where the company is heading towards. So the people who are actually executing it on the very day-to-day basis, they most often they do not have any say in where the company is heading, or where the project is heading, where they are working upon. That's a very big gap if you think about it. Like we are spending a life, our time into something, and we cannot decide where it's going, right? This is absolutely a change into DAOs. Everything, and like when I'm talking about this, I'm talking more on the theoretical perspective. The practical applications might still be evolving and getting mature with time, but theoretically, DAOs provide us an avenue where any decision which is of any critical measure has to be taken democratically. The people who are involved in this project have to vote and decide together that where the direction of the project should be, how much money should be invested, how with what direction should be taken, or what has to be done with any particular decision on that project has to be taken together. It does not restrict itself in ideal scenarios to any set of centralized figures in an organization or within sub-organization teams, but rather everyone is involved or has the ability to get involved into this decision making. B, I opt in for different kind of projects where I'm interested into. So that is again a very much different scenario which we see in Web3 companies. That sorry, in Web2 companies, that usually what happens is the resources are allocated based upon, say, you're working on this project one today, and then suddenly the company has a different priority, which again you didn't decide upon, but now you're working upon project two, and then you're working upon project three the next month, right? But in DAOs, a lot of this decision making that where I am working is decided by me, because I opt in that I want to contribute towards this, I want to contribute towards that project, and I want to spend this much amount of time, because your payment structure is also very composable, right? You define that how much you want to dedicate time to this particular organization, to this particular project, and that's how you get paid. So everything is much more flexible, much more you are in control of your work and decisions. So that is again a flexibility which it gives. And then the last thing which comes up is that even when you would have been a pretty prime executor in any Web2 company, what it more than often results into is that when the product launches or when the project launches and get out, right, the revenue which it generates, you get much more smaller pie of that revenue, but the most of it gets distributed again to a very restricted or very small set of people, right? So the end deliverable, or the people in the bottom of the ladder, they get a very small chunk of the project which they were working upon. This is again not the case in DAOs. In the DAOs, you can define upon that, hey, how much you want to get paid for the contribution which you are making. That takes place on your deals and terms. And more importantly, when it shoots out, more than often you are paid very proportionately to the effort which you have put in, because that compensation mechanism is democratically decided again. So these beautiful solution which the DAOs bring into this entire space, I personally feel are much more justified in the kind of the work which people should do. It aligns with their interests, give them the authority and the power to make decisions, and then pay them proportionately to the amount of effort they are bringing in. So I think that's how it enables people about their work and their lives. So yeah.
And you mentioned like job flexibility in DAOs and also the crypto industry as a whole. You were saying how like if someone's going to contribute to a project most of the time, I know a lot of the time it's going to be like freelance workers who are going to work on a specific aspect of the project, and then maybe in a couple weeks or a couple months the project doesn't necessarily need that individual anymore. But I think that although that is good to have like job flexibility, and for contributors they can jump from project to project, or they can try to contribute as much as possible on one specific project and just move across roles. The one thing that it does create is an issue of like job security, because if you're someone who wants to be a full-time DAO contributor, even if you're working for like maybe two or three different DAOs and you're trying to contribute as much as possible, like
Yeah.
what do you foresee is the solution to job security with DAOs when you're not like a core member of the main team, but you want to be a contributor for multiple projects, so you want to try to make it like your full-time job?
That's pretty interesting, and it boils down into two different aspects of the same problem. That a job security, we can talk about that how much the employment which you're working towards is assured, and B, there is a lot of added benefits which you get with your jobs, right? Like dental insurances or your health insurance and so on and so forth, which are pretty seamless in Web2 companies, and which is which are almost there in even any of the companies which you work towards. And let me answer the second part first. So regarding this particular space where providing different insurances or covers or services which people get in Web2, there are a couple of folks working towards it. And that's again a very interesting space to be in DAO tooling. That how do you ensure the same set of benefits which people get otherwise to the people who are working maybe on different projects into different organizations and who are working into decentralized world right now. And there are some amazing projects. I can remember Opolis is working upon that, which provides different kind of insurances and covers to the people like that. So job security in that terms of insurances and covers are taken care of it by the people in the space. Now working towards this, that hey, the assurance of the duration of the job and getting paid by it, if that is the aspect of the job security you want to talk about, I believe it is much more the open system right now, because uh, that might always come in that the projects which you're working upon, that is not taking place. But more than often, see, let's try to understand that how work, right? That how in most of the projects what happens is that you go and decide and propose that this is the project which I am interested into, or these are the set of folks which are interested into, and we request you to provide us this much amount of funding, and you can launch it out into these many different brackets. That on the stage one, if we have completed this, then release this particular amount. In stage two, release this particular amount, and then the final deliverable, release the entire amount which is remaining. So this contractual agreement which is taking place is many times governed by smart contracts, and that's how ideally it should be done. And when that is taking place, you are much more assured to get paid for the task which you opted in by yourself for doing, right? So I have not heard a lot of issues regarding this, that if the people are afraid that they won't be paid back or so on and so forth. And if at all, there are some solutions which people are working towards. So for example, one of the very important DAO tooling platform, which is Aragon Network, which enables people to create DAOs, also have a legal vertical where they solve disputes if any taking place between the people who are given contracts for the task and the people who have, who are working for them. So there are solutions at place for it, but mostly it is because self-initiated task and self-designed compensation mechanism. It is much more secure in that way. So
Yeah,
okay.
and I think there could be a lot of other routes for monetization too for a lot of these DAO contributors, because obviously the DAO contributors are going to be so intimately involved in the project that I think especially even for things like delegation, like if you're trying to have like vote delegation for different decisions, it would make the most sense to try to find someone that you align with in terms of their values, and maybe is a very active contributor to the project, and then delegate your votes to them. And then that could be another route for monetization. So I think that could be really interesting. But I think, Michael, you can get the next question.
Yeah, before I go into the next question, just for the
Mhm.
viewers, it kind of sounds like what DAOLens is trying to do is be the Upwork and the Fiverr of the crypto space. Would you say that's correct? Whereas something like Crypto Jobs List would be a platform like that would be looking to acquire people for the core team. But it sounds like you guys are more focused towards specific jobs within the team that they require, which is freelance work, right? Is that a fair assumption to make?
All right, Michael. So, the only enhancement which I would want to do to this particular definition is that what we are essentially doing is that we don't want to restrict, or we are not in that particular space right now, that we are getting you folks for this particular profile. But rather, if the people are joining your community, then how do they get routed to the right place? That is what we're focusing upon. Okay, so think of it in this way, that if you join in the centralized companies, you usually have this orientation session which you get in the first week, which
Yeah.
helps you to understand that, hey, what are your mission and vision statement of the companies, what does your task look like, what does the team look like, what does the office look like, for example, right? So in the entire 1 week, usually the human resources department takes care of those tasks, or the culture and talent teams take care of those tasks. So that is something, and in the space we are focusing right now. We surely want to scale to other tools and structures which can help people to contribute better, be effective at the tasks which they're doing in the DAO spaces. But certainly we are right now not focusing to get people inside, but the for DAOs. But if the people are coming in by themselves, then how do they reach to the right places? That's where we are.
Right, like
Uh,
with Curve and a lot of these like liquidity wars that were curving with governance control over these projects. I know that was very successful for DAOs because I think it started to show the value of the votes that a lot of these projects were creating. So, like, what routes do you see for future DAOs to like replicate value in terms of the votes and to make their projects more enticing, not only to contributors but then also to like investors, I think.
Perfect. All right. So now this is pretty interesting because all many different DAOs have are coming up with these different interesting models where they're trying to increase the value of their particular token. So we have the model for nouns for that particular matter. What they do essentially is that you buy a noun token, they have the bidding on it, and then you get become a member of that particular DAOs. And then you can on the other side of it, if you are someone who wants to work on the mission of nouns to expand it, you can go and write a proposal to them, and then you work towards it, which eventually creates more popularity for nouns, and then eventually increasing the bidding of it, right? While other DAOs who are working towards creating and launching very interesting projects by themselves and not depending upon the external people to come and build for them. And then so what I'm essentially coming to is it all boils down at the end of the day, the value which you are producing in the product or the services where you are, right? Okay, and this will be very much on similar lines, at least philosophically. How Web2 companies or the companies which are aware of their valuation keeps on increasing. So once you start providing much more required valued services to the entire community, the so and like the more people would start to become aware of it, and that's just something which is pretty interesting because in Web2 you usually used to find so many different companies which have a lot of market capture, but you don't know about it. But in DAOs, the game is a bit different because it is all about community. So more often than not, if a DAO is very popular, then it also has a very big community, and then it also leads to a very high valuation of it. So what I'm coming to is that the more value you generate in your product and services, the more better social networks which are able to develop by keeping your community engaged, by expanding your community regularly, the more valued your token, and eventually the valuation of a DAO will keep on increasing. So that's the strategy I believe the DAOs would be following, philosophically very much in similar lines to what the centralized companies used to do. So
No, I completely agree, and I think the reason why the Curve Wars was so successful and why like the Curve token became such a massive play in the market was really because like Curve almost with the way that they built their incentivization model, it incentivized other projects to build on top of what they were already building. And so then, as you were mentioning, like that creates a lot more value for the ecosystem, which then causes everyone to benefit. But at the same time, you don't necessarily need to build on top of different projects to create that value. If you can just have a good process to onboard new people who can create value for your community, for the project, then that will increase the valuation as a whole. So really, the most important thing that a lot of these DAOs should be looking at to increase their valuations and increase the value that they're providing to the market is just getting as many like talented contributors and people to the project, whether that be building on top of their existing project or contributing directly to the DAO. So I think that that's a really good point that you made.
absolutely, yeah.
And something else, like on the same topic of like existing DAOs and stuff that's been really successful in the DAO space, something that was huge towards the end of last year was Constitution DAO. I think that
Yeah.
brought a lot of like mainstream attention to the DAO space. And that got a lot of people who were maybe interested like initially in the NFT market. Then they started to look at DAOs because they were thinking, you know, once you say, well, we can try to crowdsource all this money together and crowdfund all this money together and buy like basically anything in the world, it really got a lot of people's minds going. So like, what do you think about Constitution DAO and like this model of crowdfunding, getting money together, and then buying or like acquiring some really big organization that turns it into a DAO? And like, do you see more DAO use cases coming out over time that people just still haven't realized yet?
Yeah, absolutely. So, like, I love the entire story of Constitution DAO, and for the very good reasons which you mentioned, right? That it brought a lot of attention towards a potential which a set of people aligned towards the same interest can do, right? And to the very extent, like, fortunately, unfortunately, they were not able to reach to the goal they were aiming for, but definitely they brought in that huge, humongous wave to bring in people from this entire NFT, the boom, and focus upon this entire DAO space which is evolving and building up. And from that I would regard as a very landmark point in the entire evolution of DAOs, because then people started to figure out and brainstorm out all the interesting use cases which you can do when you are in this particular space, right? So that's a very, very lovely story which they has brought into this particular domain altogether. When we talk about this, right, that the entire initiative of crowdfunding and going towards achieving different targets, there are pretty interesting models which are coming up for this, and which aligns and works even with the other blockchain technologies which people are building, right? For example, there is a DAO, party DAO, which what enables is that people can come together, collate their funds, and buy different NFTs, and then they become the fractional owners of the NFTs together, right? And this entire discussion take place inside their communities, the party DAO community. So, and similarly, like I'm aware of a DAO which is working upon to get their member to reach moon. So, to impact those amazing and crazy ideas people are working towards. And I honestly believe that this entire space has a lot of scope to get mature and more refined. Like any evolving in the budding technology, people come up with brilliant ideas which are very scattered all over the places. But usually, what happens is that when the dust settles, people find much more actionable and practical solutions for that, right? And this is not the space just which has happened recently or for this DAO communities. If you remember correctly, right, the DAOs have been in this space for very long. They have been like since 2015 and 2016. They have been in this particular vertical, and even at that time, when they were very new, people used to focus upon that hey, we want to create our entire new nations, we'll topple the countries and the governments and so on and so forth. So there was a borderline fanatism which people had regarding this space was like slightly crazy. But eventually, what we have realized now is the system is much more streamlined. The system is much more organized. We are getting much more tactical and practical solutions about how DAOs can contribute, how it can generate and become a reliable source for creating value, reliable source for actually working, and maybe become a substitute for work. This space still is evolving. It's I won't say that it is anywhere close to maturity right now, but I love to see the different projects which people are working towards. Like people are working towards enhancing human life. People are working towards taking humans to moon. People are working towards enabling researchers to become entrepreneurs. People are working towards building movies and movie studios in decentralized and metaverses. So there is a number of amazing solutions which people are the projects which people and the communities are building, apart from the enormous number of DeFi projects which you see in DAOs already. But I believe there is it's just a dawn of this movement, and there is so much new which we have to yet see.
What project has done the best job so far of onboarding contributors, and what makes them different? Is there a specific one that stands out among the crowd? And maybe you can highlight what they've done right.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So there are some interesting nuances in different projects which they have done. And before I jump on to and give a shout out to different projects, if we just try to understand that what does a good onboarding look like, right? A good onboarding has to be very transparent, has to be pretty articulate as what we are, and able to answer these questions: that what you're going to do, how you're going to do it, and what are things for you out here, okay, and what's the right people to get started. If you are able to answer these very basic fundamental questions which any new person would have, or we ourselves would have as soon as we start to join a new space, we are good with that. So onboarding which gives you these answers is a good onboarding. There can be different solutions or the routes to do it. It can be through a software based solution. It can be through a document which most of the DAOs right now have, or it can be through one-on-one person getting you onboarded and giving you answers to these questions, right? But that summarizes it. Like that summarizes when you're giving tactical answers to these questions, you are getting people started very effectively. Now, what interesting projects have done it? Like I would like to mention Index Co-op and Bankless certainly have done pretty interesting job. So what Index Co-op does is that they have this entire quest for the new joiners, Copper Owl quest as they call it. And what it consists of is that there are different checkpoints or different steps which you need to take if you want to become an active contributor of that particular DAO. Okay, and these can be as simple as if that hey, go on our forum and comment upon this and send us the link to that comment. So giving them low hanging fruits and to make them contribute and making people active in that community, right? Or it can be as simple as that come on our community call and give us the notes of what your understanding of the call was. So as soon as you are involving people from right from the onboarding to become a part of a community, get them some low hanging tasks to get them started. That is something which is very effective. and backed by very straightforward, detailed articulation as what the community is about, the projects you're working towards, and what is the expected for outcome from any new members based upon their profile, skills, experiences. I think that suffices it. So yeah.
Yeah. And what would you say your long-term goals are with DAOLens in terms of bringing these like successful onboarding processes that you found with other projects and trying to get people more involved in DAOs and contributing to DAOs? How do you plan on tackling that long-term with DAOLens, and what's your long-term goal?
Perfect. So, like as I was mentioning, Arjun, right now, right, that a successful onboarding would lead to contribution. So, if the people are just coming in your community, they're not contributors. It's not helping you out. They are just becoming lurkers and increasing the weight and the noise in your community, right? So, as soon as the onboarding is leading to contribution, so when you make onboarding efficient, it also covers the part where you have to work and sit with the DAOs to enhance their contribution process, enhance the process in which how they manage their tasks, their responsibilities, their organizations, and how their entire workflow works within themselves, right? So this is exactly what we want to focus upon once we are pretty comfortable and once you have scaled our onboarding solution, is that we want to help communities to articulate their task and the projects much more effectively, to manage their compensation much more effectively, which can help a new joiner A get much more transparent understanding that what the community is working towards, and B, even for the existing members, it should be much more clear that these are the set of tasks the community is working towards. This is where I am interested into, and why don't I just hop onto it? And that's how the process looks like for this task, how much I'll be paid and compensated. And eventually, like once I'm doing this, I'm going through that process and getting compensated. So this vertical of contribution is something which we definitely want to expand into after onboarding too. So that's where we are looking towards. And then like as the industry evolves, we are constantly working with different teams and industry leaders to understand and keep on being in touch with the different pain points which communities have. So and the mission is very straightforward, that we want to enable and excel all the different communities in that house space. So whatsoever comes up, and if there is another popping requirement at that time, we would love to take that challenge on. So yeah.
Okay. So, since you have a lot of experience with DAOs, I'd like to ask you, what advice do you have for new founders looking to enter into the Web3 world, or the DAO world? Um, yeah, is there any important points that you think that would be helpful for those new founders?
Perfect. So what we have seen working with all the different communities across this particular duration which we are building, right?
Yeah.
And especially for the new communities, what usually happens is many of the people enter into this domain because DAOs are fancy and this is the new kid in the town, so they just want to experiment it out. But one thing which is very critical to note out here is that this clear understanding that why you are building a community, right? What are your expectations from them? What is your mission for that community? Are you just creating a play where you want to increase the revenue of your token? If it is as simple as that, it's okay. If it is, or are you working towards a particular mission? If it is so, how do you articulate that? How what structure of your organization, of your DAO you want to take into? Is it going to be entirely decentralized? Is it going to be something which has different nodes and then it is decentralized, like hub and spoke model? How do you want to structure that workflow is something which is pretty interesting. One of the very important things to take care when you are creating community is that how do you keep all the people engaged, which is at times very difficult if you are pretty new to starting a community. So and many of the folks we have often seen struggle with that. And that engagement also comes with that how do you give different people tasks and contributions, because if they are coming a part of your communities, it is slightly different from being in a Reddit group or a Facebook group where you can just exist. Here people are coming with the expectation that they'll be working on something and eventually they'll be compensated. So you need to define that workflow, that if someone is joining a community, what a different work and work structure you can have for them, what different compensation mechanism you can have for them. And once that clarity you have within yourself, it is much more easier to translate that within your broader community. And the last important thing to take care of is we need to focus upon that how quickly we can go from being a centralized framework to decentralized framework. And I'll say you this because the way naturally DAOs grow is that it often starts with a bunch of people coming together and trying to build a project over a certain idea, and then eventually they should start lose out the control for the entire community to become a part of it and equal decision makers into it. So there is a term for progressive decentralization, and this is something which DAOs needs to structure and definitely think from the day one that how they are going to do about it. Because as soon as your projects have to grow, expand, and rapidly, there are many people who will be coming with different expectations, who will be looking forward that how can they grow their careers into this particular community. So you need to ensure that their career also grows as your community is growing, which will happen as soon as you start to decentralize your community much more effectively and make everyone a part of it and make everyone grow along with your community. So better articulation, proper work structures, and then a proper plan, strategic plan of decentralization your entire DAO. I think that helps.
And you
So yeah.
mentioned that DAOs are the new kid on the block. I definitely think that's true in terms of interest. I know I don't attend too many like cryptocurrency conferences, but I recently was able to make it to Ethereum Denver, and something that I noticed is that just being in any cafe, any environment where people were talking, it was basically always about DAOs. Every single person was working on a new DAO, a different DAO with a different goal. It was really interesting to see the variety of different founders that are gravitated towards DAOs, because it can be people who are maybe not even crypto native at all, but they see kind of the power of this specific structure and how it can apply to so many different ventures and businesses. And so that's why I think DAOs, like this idea of onboarding in DAOs and advice to DAO founders as a whole, is so valuable. And so I wanted to thank you so much for coming on and for sharing all of this wonderful information about DAOs. And if there's anything that you want to share with the community in terms of how they can get involved in DAOLens.
Perfect. So first of all, thank you, Adrian and Michael, for having me. And indeed, it's an amazing and a brilliant space to be at. So many different ideas, brilliant set of people coming up with their perspective about how the world would look like. Because as I mentioned before, that we are sitting at the dawn of this entire new set of technologies. The entire blockchain space is pretty amazing with the different ideas people bring in, and DAOs enabling that is crazy. So very bullish about this space. To For our viewers to get started with DAOLens, you can visit our website at www.daolens.com. You'll get a very comprehensive information that what we're working towards, what our mission is, how we're expanding, and then how we can enable different communities to get started, enhance their workflows, and enable them to get their perfect contributors into their space and at the right place in their communities. So for any details, do visit our website and just ping us on the Discord, Twitter, LinkedIn, anywhere. We'd love to connect with any one of you interested in this space. So yeah.
Awesome. And we'll leave all the links in the description down below, as well as links to Shine DAO, the crypto incubator that made this episode possible. Make sure to follow us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and everywhere else. And see you on the next one. Thank you so much.